Welcome to The Complete Works, an official podcast of FilmBook. The Complete Works is a podcast that delves film by film into the filmography of a Hollywood actor, director, writer, or composer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Complete Works podcast, a film podcast brought to you by FilmBook. My name is Doug Hess. If you're tuning in to the Complete Works podcast for the first time, what I do on this podcast is discuss a specific movie from a film actor, actress, director, or composer's film career. I'm currently working my way through Christopher Nolan's career, and in this episode of the Complete Works podcast, I'll be discussing the film Oppenheimer. Find more information about the Complete Works podcast episodes on FilmBook. That's film-book.com by searching the term The Complete Works. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or another podcast service, please rate and review this episode. If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, please like our video, subscribe, and consider becoming one of our patrons. You can go to Patreon at patreon.com/FilmBook. Your support helps us create more engaging content. So we would appreciate your support. Now, this wraps up Christopher Nolan's film career to date with Oppenheimer. We wish him nothing but the very best. We know that we're going to be many more films out there in the future, but we are going to be stopping here because this is the last one that we have to review, Oppenheimer. And I have to say, this was something that I was really excited to go out and review. I wanted to watch this movie just as soon as I learned that this was coming out for a couple reasons. One, Christopher Nolan is a wonderful writer and director, no argument there, and I think he has proven himself time and time again. The second is this is a biopic of a historical figure, something that I really enjoy, kind of a history buff that really enjoys these types of films. So I was really interested to see what was going to happen on this. Now, as we've talked about in previous episodes, I always get a little nervous when it comes to based on true stories. The reason is, how much liberty does Hollywood take when it comes to telling the story? And while I am no expert on the dropping of or the development of the bomb, the atomic bomb during World War II, overall, I think they get it right in terms of that. So before we jump into the movie and I give you some thoughts about this, the first thing I want to do is really kind of give you a quick overview of what this story is about. So Robert Oppenheimer is the hero of this story, if you will, and I use that word hero loosely because I think some people look at him, and I think he was really conflicted himself. Yes, this bomb, or development of the bomb, the atomic bomb, helped end World War II, but it killed a lot of innocent people. So as you can see, there was a little bit of a struggle and a conflict, and I don't think you could be human if that did not affect you in some way. But he's been given the task of overseeing the infamous Manhattan Project out at Los Alamos Lab out in New Mexico during World War II. So his team has been given this assignment to build the world's first atomic bomb before the Germans do. However, like I just said, make no mistake, this is Oppenheimer's story. Basically, everything is about him and his decisions that sometimes kind of haunt him for the rest of his life, even after they developed the bomb. And I kind of alluded to that just a few minutes ago. I just don't know how you could not be torn. One, that yes, you're trying to end the war, but two, you know that you're going to be killing a lot of bad people, but a lot of innocent individuals as well. So as a viewer, we are seeing this drama unfold in the development of this bomb that eventually goes on, as we know, helps end World War II in terms of that. So what did I think about the film? I would say it's not what I expected, and I would use the word weird. Yes, weird. Why do I use that word, that specific word being weird? because, as I just mentioned at the opening of the podcast, this film is a little over 3 hours in length. But what is really odd or weird, as I will use the word again, this film doesn't have any gunshots. You don't see any car chases, any fights that are breaking out. Very rarely do you utter a cuss word in this film. There's not a lot of sex. There is a little bit of sex, some very brief. But I think even though when you're watching those short scenes, the characters and the real-life individual were probably really not into that because they had other things on their mind that was very heavy. They were developing this very top-secret project. So I use the word weird. It was weird in that sense because it's not typical. If you look at some of the other Christopher Nolan films, everything across the board, they've got guns, there's fighting, there's all kind of action. And this is really a film that is about destruction, but none is really shown. And again, so I use that word weird or unusual in terms of that. Is it necessarily a bad thing? No, I don't think so. I think it gets the point across, but it's just not something that you expect in this type of film. So again, I use the word weird in terms of that. Instead of the fighting and the gunshots and all that stuff, what you do see is some very heavy dialogue in terms of that. The other thing that I think is very interesting in this film is that it's a black and white and it's a color film in color. And that is to represent two different aspects of the film. And did that bother me at first? Yes, I'm not going to lie. Why did that bother me? Is because typically in today's environment, we're used to color. Unless you're going to go back and watch an older film in black and white. And then you do hear some, I think it was the artist that was filmed completely in black and white. But my point is, it kind of threw me off, but there is a purpose for that. And we'll talk about this here in a few minutes, but it's a contrast that is being shown by Christopher Nolan in that. So it's a heavy film that I thought it was very heavy in terms of that because you can see the agony in Oppenheimer's face and the way he acted. This film has a lot of great actors and actresses in it, a great supporting cast in there as well. But yet no violence, even though the film is about violence at the very end. So, again, very interesting in terms of that. What are some of the other things about this film? Oppenheimer's life is really messy. So he's married, but he has a mistress, and he's supporting, but sometimes he has a very unforgiving wife. He's also living during a time where your political views could really affect you. And so you almost had to be a little right or down the middle when it comes to your political views, or it could come back to haunt you. You also have to remember there were spies all over the place, and there was surrounded in secrecy. Matter of fact, in this film, and this is something that we'll talk about in the trivia, that Christopher Nolan made them really get into character. They, even during their rehearsal, when they were reading through, they had to be in costume or in character pretty much all time. And some of the things that he was filming, and again, we'll talk a little bit about this in the trivia, is they were in very tight spaces, very close to what these individuals were engaged in. The reason for that is because they didn't want information to get out. They were afraid that spies were all over the place and that the government was controlling everything. So you have this pressure to race against the clock before the Germans get it, the bomb, and then you're doing something that is going to completely affect mankind and alter history, if you will, and you have to do it in secrecy, and you're only around a certain amount of individuals. So I think that torment, that pressure, that environment can be seen with the characters that are being played, and it's just really a torturous situation. Is really the best word I can use. So throughout this film, you can see as the film progresses, Oppenheimer is conflicted about his work, and it just continues to show throughout the process. We talked about how this was meant to be dropped on the Germans, but as we all know, it wasn't Germany that the bomb was dropped on, but Japan in terms of that. So very interesting situation. It's really a remarkable story, to be honest with you, in terms of that. This film was based on a book that was written, and it took years for this book to be written, but we're going to talk about some things about how quickly Christopher Nolan was able to film this, which I think is just kind of just very interesting about how long it took to write the book, but yet when it went to filming, he was on a very tight schedule and actually in some cases kind of sped up the process. So that's, I don't know, interesting. The other thing is there was some very heavy dialogue in this film, and maybe that's because as I reflect back after watching the film, is it because it's so complicated that things had to be kind of explained and thrown at us rapidly to the audience? Was it because it was based on a true story and Christopher Nolan was trying to get everything as correct as possible? I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that. I could go either way on that particular topic. But I did find it kind of interesting that it was very heavily dialogue in this particular film. In terms of that. One other thing that I would say that I thought about the film is the special effects. Top-notch. Splendid when it comes to that. Okay? So let me talk about some of the particular characters in this film. I'm going to really bring out three. A lot of stars in this particular film. Cillian Murphy plays Robert Oppenheimer. He really nails this individual. This and from everything that I can read, everything that I've kind of did some research on. He was very particular on what he even ate because Oppenheimer in real life was very skinny, and Murphy is as well. He's not an overweight man. He didn't have to add weight. As a matter of fact, he needed to drop some. And so what I thought was really interesting is his performance is that he was really committed to this role. In terms of that, I think there was some pressure from Christopher Nolan, but I also think as an actor, Murphy was completely committed to this role and wanted to get it right, and so he did everything he could in terms of that. Florence Pugh was in here, and Robert Downey Jr. Of course, he won the Academy Award as well. Emily Blunt is Kitty Oppenheimer. Obviously, Murphy's wife in this show. What I think is interesting about Emily's performance, Again, I think she was wonderful. I think she nailed it. And she was one of those strong characters that kind of, in my personal opinion, kind of held the film together in her presence. And at first, before I watched the film and I was doing a little reading, I was trying to picture her in this role, and I wasn't necessarily sold on it. But her performance really grew on me very, very quickly when I started watching this film, and does a wonderful job. Robert Downey Jr. Does a wonderful job as well in this performance. What's interesting about him, I thought, he won an Academy Award for this. I thought he got snubbed 30 years ago with Chaplin. I thought he nailed that performance. And ever since then, Chaplin, I've really been a big fan of Robert Downey Jr. and what he can do, and he does not disappoint in this film. Let's see here. Josh Hartnett is in here. Matt Damon is in this. Jason Clarke, Casey Affleck, Gary Oldman. He plays President Truman in this film. He's not in there a lot, but he does have a presence in there. So a very big cast, some A actors and actresses in this film. Just to name a few that was in here, and I tell you, but really, Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., and Emily Blunt. Those three are the three that really stick out in my mind, make an impression on me. Not that the others didn't, but I mean, I don't want to be the guy that just says, "Oh, everybody did a wonderful job." They did, but those are really the three that really stuck out in my mind. And when after I watched the movie and really saw how they were preparing and committed to the role, it actually made me enjoy their characters even a lot more in this process. Let's analyze this film against some of the other, if you will, films. And I'm going to do this with some of the other Christopher Nolan films. So some of this reminded me of Memento because the way that some of the film was doing shuttering back and forth or flashbacks, if you will, it kind of reminded me of Memento. But it wasn't an overwhelming presence in my mind. It just kind of gave me that, I've seen this before, but it didn't hurt the film, or it didn't hurt my opinion of the film in terms of that. I thought it was nicely done and was well deserving in that. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the special effects and some of the hype that was talked about with the special effects in the shooting of the film with a 70 millimeter IMAX. Spectacular when it would be the word I would use when it comes to the special effects. The other thing that kind of reminds me of is Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet, with some of the special effects. But to me, Oppenheimer is much better. Not that there's anything wrong with the other special effects in the other three movies. Those are wonderful. But to me, this one just kind of was a little bit more powerful in terms of that. Maybe it was because of the science in terms of that and trying to get things right because they were true, where the other films like Inception and Tenet, those were all made up, and maybe the mind is allowed to be a little bit more creative. And so I go, yes, they're not judged as strict in my mind as some of the others, but I thought Oppenheimer special effects were out of this world, and they do a wonderful job in terms of the special effects. What would I say about this film? Was it good? Yeah, it was. It lived up to the hype. that I had anticipated. It was a long movie, like I said, a little over 3 hours. And sometimes when you get a movie of any major length, I think you can start to get a little nervous and say, is this going to be able to start and carry it across the finish line? And I think Christopher Nolan does that. Part of it, I think, is with the cast of characters that he has. Like I said, he has a list of characters there, some heavy hitters in the process. The other thing that I think is what works in this film is Christopher Nolan doesn't do a huge deep dive in the physics concepts. He does a little bit, but it's not to where it's like you're like, wow, this is a documentary or this is a sci-fi film that you just lose me. It's enough to be important to the film, but it's not overbearing to where you get lost in the shuffle when it comes to some of the scientific stuff or scientific approaches there. And I think that was very, very important. You have it, but it's not so overwhelming that you get lost in the process. And I think that's the key there. The other thing that I think is why this works, I think they had the right lead in Oppenheimer. I think Murphy sets the tone or the pace, if you will, for the film, and that to me kind of carries it over for everybody else in the film, because he was so committed. In my opinion, he was very committed to this role that by setting the lead actor really sets the pace on this in terms of that. I will save my particular overall to the end like I normally do, but I'm very high on this particular film in terms of that. Like I said, it was an action-packed film with dialogue. There wasn't a car chase. There wasn't any fighting. There wasn't anybody getting killed, and it was a film about death without really showing death. And I think Christopher Nolan does a wonderful job on doing this and gets away with it that maybe somebody else wouldn't have been able to pull off. But I think Christopher Nolan does that and does a wonderful job. So let's go ahead and jump gears a little bit and talk about some box office, awards, productions, etc. When it comes to this, production companies, Universal Pictures, Atlas Entertainment, Gadget Films are the production companies. Like I said, it runs a little over 3 hours. The budget is estimated at $100 million. It grossed in the U.S. and Canada a little over $329 million, almost $330. Opening weekend here in the U.S. and Canada was a little over $82 million, and that was reported on July the 23rd, so for that opening weekend of 2023. It grosses worldwide, $974 million, just shy of $100 million, but I'm sure with DVD rentals, etc., up to date that's well over the $974 million of this. What is very interesting, and I would typically say this for trivia, but I think this has to do with the box office. So I found an article with Forbes magazine, and according to Forbes, Universal agreed to give Christopher Nolan 15% of the blockbuster's first dollar gross, meaning he received a share of the box office revenue even before the studio would turn a profit. As the outlet noted, To keep the movie under its $100 million budget and maximize what he earned on the back end, Nolan slashed his directing, writing, and producing fees. Although the figure for his upfront fees were not given, basically, in short, Nolan bet on himself, and it paid off. Nolan's estimated $72 million pre-tax payday has come from his share of the box office profits, as well as the home video sales, streaming deals that have been made so far and likely to rise as this movie is resold to streamers and licensed from years and years to come on this. Forbes says that Nolan made closer to $85 million, but has subtracted the amount he would be required to pay his agent and lawyers. The outlet also claims that the director originally asked for $20 million of the film's first dollar gross in the new deal with Universal, but as you can imagine, this was negotiated down. However, the remaining 5% may still have reached the Nolan household because, as Forbes states, that probably went to his wife and longtime producing partner, Emma Thomas. So it's likely that he got, or the family received, somewhere close to that 20% that he originally asked for. Not sure, but that's really a guess, and I thought that was kind of interesting when it comes to talking about all of this in terms of that. So, very kind of interesting in terms of that. When it comes to awards, it won 7 Oscars. Let's see if we can list all of these. Best Achievement in Makeup and Hairstyle. It was a Best Achievement in Music Written for a Motion Picture, Original Score. Best Sound, Best Motion Picture of the Year. Best Achievement in the Directing. Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role. Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role. Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role. And Best Adaptation Screenplay. I should say some of these were nominees and not all winners. And I'll go back and clarify that. Best Achievement in Cinematography, Best Achievement in Film Editing, Best Achievement in Production Design, and Best Achievement in Costume Design. So those were winners/nominees all together. The winners were, let's see here, Best Achievement in Makeup Best Achievement in Music Written Before Motion Picture, Best Motion Picture of the Year, Best Achievement in Directing, Christopher Nolan, Best Performance by an Actor in a Leading Role, Murphy, Best Performance as Best Performance as an Actor in a Supporting Role, Downey Jr., Best Achievement in Cinematography, Best Achievement in Film Editing. So those were the 7, and then there were some others that were nominated in there as well. My apologies for getting that all kind of mixed up, so I apologize for maybe confusing you on that. But there was 7 Oscar winners in terms of that, so pretty good night for Oppenheimer. As we always do, we kind of end these podcasts with some trivia that I hope you find as interesting as I do. I really always enjoy when we come to looking at trivia when it comes to a film, because to me that's really some neat stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So here we go. In no particular order, Matt Damon was on a break from acting as a promise to his wife with one condition: it would go on hold if Christopher Nolan called, and luck would have it, Nolan offered Damon the role, and the break went on hold with his wife. Albert Einstein is shown walking in the woods with Kurt Gödel. The two men did actually take long walks together as friends at the Institute of Advanced Studies. Several scenes were shot on location at Princeton, and Tom Connick found it really very funny to walk through Princeton and have people react to him dressed up as Albert Einstein. Christopher Nolan claimed that one advantage for filming an ensemble cast was that the lives and personalities of the Manhattan Project scientists were well documented, and each cast member would arrive with encyclopedia knowledge of the character and the relationship with the team. So that was kind of interesting that he had a lot of information that he could give the actors and actresses so they could be as into character as much as they could. Part of the filming took place in Robert Oppenheimer's original but restored cabin in New Mexico, according to an article in the New York Times on July the 7th of 2023. Robert Downey Jr.'s favorite film of his own when it premiered in London, he said, "Just going to flat out say it, this is the best film I've ever been in," which is interesting. I have an opinion on it. I thought Chaplin was excellent, but that's my opinion on his. Matt Damon read the script first presented to him by Christopher Nolan. He was flabbergasted to see that it was written in the first person, a format that he had never seen before. Let's see here. The cast left the UK premiere after the SAG AFTRA strike was announced, leaving Christopher Nolan alone to address the audience. The real-life General Leslie Groves was significant overweight. Although Matt Damon did try to gain weight for the role, he admitted that it was nice not to have to lose weight and be able to eat whatever he wanted during production. Oliver Stone said of this film, "I sat through 3 hours of Oppenheimer, gripped by Christopher Nolan's narrative. His screenplay is layered and fascinating." Okay. Pretty much the entire cast, which included A-list actors and representative veterans, signed on just to work with Christopher Nolan, despite some, like Gary Oldman, only appearing for one scene and taking a hefty salary cut. During an interview with reporter David Martin on CBS Morning News, director Christopher Nolan pointed out that the entire reel of IMAX film stock used for the production is 11 miles long and weighs about 600 pounds. Christopher Nolan himself was very enthused to work with Robert Downey Jr. on this film, as he considered his portrayal of Tony Stark, Iron Man, to be one of the greatest casting decisions in the history of movies, according to Christopher Nolan. Okay. Just a lot of information here. The real Robert Oppenheimer stood 5 feet 11 inches and weighed only an average of 128 pounds. Under the pressure of the Manhattan Project, his weight actually dropped to 115 pounds. Christopher Nolan only needed 3 months to prep the film, and he shot it in just 57 days. See here. Although they previously collaborated in 5 other movies, this is the first time Murphy plays the lead in a Christopher Nolan film. Murphy said he watched the film with his wife and 15-year-old son at Christopher Nolan's house before it was released, adding that it was overwhelming and emotionally windy when he watched the film. It was the first ever IMAX film, particularly shot in 65mm black and white celluloid. It surpassed Saving Private Ryan from 1998 as the highest grossing World War II film documentary, and it even surpassed Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk from 2017 as the highest grossing World War II film worldwide. See here. Cillian Murphy lost 28 pounds by sticking to a strict diet and abstaining from alcohol during the filming of this. Damon joked that, by contrast, he was eating Mexican food and drinking margaritas while shooting in New Mexico. Murphy also tried to get 10 hours of sleep a night and would retire early. Christopher Nolan wrote the screenplay through the first person, envisioning the story without any specific actor in the lead role. Robert Downey Jr. claimed that due to the copious amount of dialogue, he made a point to immediately memorize all of his lines for the entire role before filming ever started. Christopher Nolan insisted that the cast wear period dress throughout the production. It was shot under the title Gadget. We'll just give you a few more here. I mean, there's just really a ton of information here. This is the second Christopher Nolan film related to World War II. Events following Dunkirk in 2017. The film was released exactly 6 years to the day after Dunkirk. Thought that was really fascinating. See here, just a few more. Michael Caine joked to Christopher Nolan about not being able to star in the atomic bomb epic. Okay, enough is enough. Caine told his frequent collaborator, I had to go off on my own. Thought that was kind of funny there. Let's see here. I know there was a couple others that I wanted to lay out for you. Murphy was 46 and portrays Robert Oppenheimer from his early 20s to his late 50s. After 5 previous nominations, Christopher Nolan won his first Academy Award for this film. He won in the category as Best Picture as a producer and Best Director, and he also earned a further nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Let's see here. For Matt Damon, this surpassed The Martian in 2015 as Matt Damon's highest-grossing film. Here's what I wanted to tell you. When Einstein is first seen, he is throwing a stone, and his last name in German means a stone. And this is the second highest grossing biography film domestically after American Sniper from 2014. So there's a lot more trivia that I could lay out here for you, but we're just going to stop it there. So overall, what did I think of Oppenheimer? I would give it an 8 out of 10. Why I would do that is because, one, I kind of like biopics and World War II movies, so I'm a little biased on that, but it was different. You know, when I think of World War II movies, you're thinking of blood, you're thinking of killing, you're thinking of fighting, and this film had none of that, so it really intrigued me. I think it works. Not every film could probably get away with something like this and still be talking about death at the end and with the dropping of the bomb. In terms of that, because we know what happens at the end when it comes to Japan and the dropping of the atomic bomb. So I would give it an 8 out of 10, something that if you haven't seen, I would highly recommend. It's 3 hours, a little over 3 hours in length. So make sure you're in the right frame of mind when you watch this film, because there are parts that's kind of heavy, and to really enjoy the film for what it is, I think you have to be in the right frame of mind in terms of that. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Complete Works Podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe for future episodes. You'll find the Film Book on all major social media networks, so give us a follow. You can find more information on FilmBook's official website, which is film-book.com. Just search for Doug Hess or The Complete Works. You can also find me on Twitter at HessDoug14. Tune in next time when we review and analyze a new film, and we are going to be starting the film career of Tom Cruise. And I believe that particular film, his first film that he was in, was from 1981, Endless Love. So we'll be switching gears and be talking about Tom Cruise. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to The Complete Works. Find more of The Complete Works on FilmBook, on your favorite podcast service, and on YouTube.